Another visitor, stay a while, stay forever.
Hmm.
If you had a Commodore 64 back in the mid-'80s, that synthesized voice, I mean, it's not just a memory, is it?
No, not at all. For a lot of people, that was the sound of the future, just arriving in their living room.
It completely defined the whole atmosphere of Impossible Mission. But here's the question we want to dig into. Was the game just a flashy tech demo that leaned really heavily on a cool voice chip?
Or was it what the critics at the time were actually saying? They called it, and I'm quoting here, the definitive platform game.
Which is a huge claim. Did it genuinely reset the bar for quality across that whole 8-bit landscape?
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're not just going off nostalgia. We are doing a proper archaeological dig into the digital past.
And for our source material, we've got this fascinating stack of game reviews. Specifically, we're looking at the screenplay section from Personal Computer World magazine, the January 1985 issue.
And that timing, January 85, is so important. It's this moment where the 8-bit market was hitting a really interesting inflection point.
You had that, American polish, the Epyx games, colliding head-on with this very different kind of UK ingenuity.
Exactly. The bedroom coder scene, the budget constraints, games come out on the Spectrum, the C64, a totally different world.
So our mission today is to really analyze what the reviewers thought was essential back then. What were the big technical leaps? What about the emergence of this kind of rules-bending multiplayer chaos?
And some of the genuinely bizarre narrative risks that developers were taking.
Right.
I mean, we have a snapshot here that covers everything from these incredibly polished imports to, well, to strange, text-heavy adventures that came bundled with, of all things, digital psychoanalysis.
Right. We're hoping to give you those aha moments, showing not just what games you could buy in January 1985, but what the industry actually thought the future of entertainment should look like.
And to start this deep dive, we really have to begin with the game that kind of defined that era's polish.
We have to start with Impossible Mission.
Impossible Mission, Commodore 64. It was supplied by Epyx through CBS Software, and importantly, it was a disc release, which put its price at £11.95.
Okay, and we'll get into the economics of that later because that price point already sets it apart from the sea of cassette games.
Oh, absolutely.
But first, that opening line. That voice is the evil Dr. Elvin, and he's not messing around. He's threatening the entire world with nuclear annihilation from his secret bunker.
And you are the person tasked with stopping him. Specifically, you are Agent 41225.
Which, at first glance, just sounds like a number. But there's a bit of a joke in there, isn't there?
There is, yeah. The reviewer picked up on this. It's this little piece of dark humor. Because if you think about it, if you're Agent 41205, it sort of implies that Agent 007, Agent 008, and well, thousands of others have already failed.
So the mission is literally impossible.
It sets a pretty bleak expectation for your chances of survival before you've even started.
And as soon as you start playing, you get why so many agents might have failed. This wasn't just some basic, screen flick platformer.
No. The complexity, the sheer polish of it, it's what earned the game that immediate declaration from the reviewer. He didn't hesitate. He called it the definitive platform game.
So what was it that backed up such a big claim?
I think it really hinges on the execution of the environment and how you interact with it. So you're controlling your agent with the joystick, moving through this huge complex of 32 different rooms.
And the rooms themselves aren't simple grids. They're filled with platforms, automated lifts you have to time your jumps onto.
And all these different objects you have to investigate. But the first thing that just jumps out at you is the character animation.
Oh, it was incredible. Your agent, 4125, he doesn't just run and jump. He does these beautifully smooth, stylized somersaults and graceful dives.
And you have to remember, for 1985, a lot of UK-made games had these janky two-frame character loops. So seeing this fluid animation was a huge technical differentiator. It looked like a cartoon.
It meant the collision detection had to be absolutely spot on, too, to make those moves feel responsive, and not just for show.
And then, guarding these 32 rooms, you have the antisocial robots.
Which is a great name.
It is. And what made them genuinely terrifying and so frustrating is that their patrol patterns weren't static. You couldn't just memorize them.
So they were actually seeking you out?
Yes, they were human-seeking, and, this is the critical part, their routes would actually change from one game to the next.
Okay, so that completely breaks the arcade model of the time, where success is all about pattern recognition, the classic learn the routine approach.
Exactly. Impossible Mission demanded you actually react and adapt every single time you played. It built this immense replay value right into the core mechanics. You couldn't just learn the safe spots.
You had to master the somersault, you had to master the timing on the lifts just to survive these encounters that were always dynamic.
Right. And then there's the core objective, the actual mission, the search loop.
You're on a very tight clock, and you need to find these puzzle pieces. When you put them together, they crack Dr. Elvin's security code.
So you manage to get past a robot, you get to an object, and the reviewer notes it could be anything, a safe, a desk, even the kitchen sink, and you start the search by pushing up on the joystick.
And that's where the time pressure mechanic becomes just genius.
It is. The second you initiate that search, this diminishing bar appears on screen. That's your agent rifling through the furniture. And while that's happening, you are completely frozen, totally vulnerable.
And the main mission clock is just ticking down.
While you're stuck there. And the payoff is usually, well, it's nothing.
Right. The review says you find usually nothing.
Precisely. Occasionally you'll unearth a puzzle piece, but most of the time you just waste precious seconds. It's this high-risk, low-reward system that just ratchets up the tension.
It's a genuine strategic choice. Do you risk searching this random cupboard knowing it's probably empty, or do you try and get to the next room before the clock hits 0?
But the thing that really sold the game, the feature that gives it that iconic atmosphere, has to be the sound design.
It wasn't just the voice, it was everything. The entire sonic landscape was revolutionary.
It created this level of immersion that was it was unparalleled for the 8-bit era. When your agent runs along the metal corridors, the footsteps sound like metal.
That clanking sound, yeah.
The lift noises sound authentic, the specific digitized sounds the robots make. It all conveys this mechanized threat, this level of detail made the world feel tactile.
And then, on top of all that, you have the voice synthesis. That opening line is the classic, but it's the little phrases that happen in-game that really get under your skin.
Oh yeah, imagine you enter a new room, you think you've dodged a robot, and then you just hear this chilling command.
Kill him, my robots.
It was genuinely disturbing to players. It was one of those moments where the game felt like it was speaking directly to you. And we can't forget the sound of failure.
The famous death sound. That digitized, oh, as your agent just plummets off a platform.
Instantly recognizable. It confirmed your failure with high fidelity. And if you failed the whole mission, not only did you get this evil laugh, but it would often announce a report of your dismal performance.
The whole package was just so cohesive, so wicked, and so highly produced.
And all of that technical achievement, it leads directly to the critical verdict. The reviewer's praise for Impossible Mission wasn't just praise. It was also a pretty severe condemnation of the quality standards elsewhere in the industry.
Let's pull out that exact quote again, because it's such a powerful statement about the industry politics of 1985. UK software houses could learn a lot from Impossible Mission in terms of quality. It's streets ahead.
That is a serious burn.
Yeah.
I mean, to print that in a major publication, it forces us to ask what exactly was Epyx, an American company, doing so right that the UK's, burgeoning bedroom coder scene was seen as lacking.
Well, it seems to boil down to consistent, sustained polish. It was a mastery of the hardware's limits.
I think so. Epyx had superior character animation. Every somersault was smooth. Every movement was responsive. They invested in outstanding sound design, creating that atmosphere that, a lot of UK coders often had to skimp on.
Many UK software houses, especially if you look at the budget cassette market, were working on these incredibly tight turnaround times.
Right, they were trying to release games quickly to capitalize on a trend. And that often led to poor quality control. You'd get janky collision detection, unresponsive controls, graphics that just lacked any fluidity.
So Impossible Mission basically showed the UK industry what was possible when you combine that ingenuity with a high production budget and, crucially, enough development time.
It proved that the 8-bit machines, especially the C64, were capable of a seamless cinematic experience. You just had to take the time to really master the machine, not just rush something out the door. It wasn't just fun, it was technically advanced. It set a new, extremely high benchmark.
Okay, so let's pivot. We're moving away from the solitary, high-stakes world of Agent 4125 to something completely different, head-to-head competitive sabotage.
Yes. The rise of simultaneous multiplayer. This brings us squarely to Spy versus Spy for the Commodore 64.
A classic, and just a brilliant example of adapting intellectual property, right?
Oh, absolutely. It takes the famous adversaries from Mad Magazine, the Black Spy and the White Spy, and just drops their rivalry into this game of pure, frantic skullduggery.
And the setting is this big embassy building.
A massive embassy.
Yeah.
And the mission seems straightforward, but it's incredibly tense. You and your opponent have a strict time limit to find 4 key items hidden in the furniture.
A passport, money, a key, and the secret plans.
Exactly. Once you have them all, you have to escape through a hidden door carrying a top-secret briefcase. But the inventory system is what creates the immediate strategic risk.
Right, because you can only carry one item at a time.
That one constraint changes everything. If you find the money, but you still need the key, you have this choice. Do you race back to your little hiding spot to deposit the money, or do you risk carrying it while you look for the next item?
Making you a prime target for your opponent to just come and bash you with a club.
Which is always an option. So the briefcase becomes the single most valuable item in the game. If you find that first, you can bundle your documents together, and that frees up your hands.
To carry a trap.
Or a weapon. And this is where the fun, or as the source material puts it, the mindless violence really begins. Your opponent isn't just trying to collect things faster than you. They're actively trying to destroy you with this pretty intricate trap system.
So beyond the club bashing, what were the more subtle forms of sabotage?
You had 3 main traps: bombs, large springs that would launch the other spy, and buckets of water. And you could place these above doors or, very cleverly, inside the very pieces of furniture where the documents were hidden.
So you're setting a trap right on the objective.
Exactly. The genius of the design is that each trap has a specific counter item you have to find to disarm it.
So if I set a bomb, the other spy needs what? Like a wire cutter or something?
Something like that, yeah. Otherwise, boom. And the reviewer points out one of the best comedic elements of the game, which was the self-sabotage.
Oh, right. He says spies were commonly known to be blown up by their own bombs.
All the time. You'd forget where you set a trap in your frantic search. You'd open a drawer, and that's it. That accidental comedy was a huge part of its charm.
So what happens when you do fall for a trap? What's the penalty besides, the humiliation?
Well, the penalty is humiliation. If you get caught, say, by an electrifying bucket of wire, which you could have countered with an umbrella you find in a coat rack, you're graphically penalized.
The review says you're fitted with a pair of wings and a halo.
It's the perfect visual for a time penalty.
Yeah.
But here's the truly cruel part of the multiplayer mechanic.
Okay.
While you are temporarily demised and losing those vital seconds waiting to respawn, your opponent gets a brief moment to just stand there and chuckle before they carry on.
Oh, that's evil. It's the ultimate digital taunt built right into the gameplay.
The psychological element is huge. The winner isn't just the one who collects the items. It's the one who times that final play perfectly. Maybe you mug your opponent just as they're about to escape, steal the briefcase, and make a run for it yourself.
So the competitive dynamics are just superb. And all of this chaos was supported by a pretty big technical innovation for the C64.
Yes, the split-screen graphics.
Explain how that worked, because it was so vital for the competition.
Right. So initially, each spy sees their own separate display of whatever room they're in. This lets you search and place traps in secret. But the moment you both physically enter the same room,
the screens merge.
Instantly.
Yeah.
They transfer and merge into a single shared screen. This switch forces the confrontation. It minimizes any confusion and just maximizes the immediate tension of that encounter.
That seamless transition is key. And on the right of the screen, you had what they called the trapulators,
which was the interface for selecting your traps, but also for viewing the critical map of the embassy. You were constantly glancing over there, checking your location, trying to track your opponent, planning your next move.
So the theme is clear. The real fun is in the betrayal. Let's see how that same theme translates to a completely different genre. We're moving to racing.
Okay, so we're looking at Rally Speedway for the Atari. This was a cartridge game from Adventure International.
And the source material is very clear. This is a game best played with 2 players.
Absolutely. You're hurdling these rally cars around tracks that you can actually devise yourself. And you can set them to be dry, wet, or icy, which adds different handling challenges.
The objective is classic racing, shortest time wins. But the rules, much like Spy versus Spy, seem to actively encourage total anarchy.
They're designed to reward aggression. There are 2 main penalties. You get 5 seconds added to your time for leaving the screen.
So falling too far behind the leader.
Right. And you get 10 seconds for crashing. But the really fascinating part is how the reviewer gives the player this psychological permission to just break reality.
What do you mean?
He notes that since you race only in a computer, not in real life, you are free to happily drive through the bushes, houses, and pools that surround the course.
So the environment isn't really a solid barrier. It's just a a textured surface that gives you a penalty.
Exactly. It's a huge design decision that immediately shapes your strategy. Why bother avoiding a house if your main goal is to win the race at any cost?
And the key competitive tactic isn't about maintaining a perfect racing line. It's about what the review calls a timely ramming.
Timely ramming is essential. If you can use the game's physics to your advantage, smash into your opponent and send them crashing into a house or a pool.
You force them to take that 10-second penalty.
Exactly. The strategy transforms the game from a test of driving skill into a focused combat experience that's just disguised as a race.
So we're seeing two completely different games, a stealth puzzle game and a racing title, and both of them find their core fun in active, aggressive player sabotage. Early in 1985, gaming was clearly embracing the joy of digitally griefing your friends.
And that pure competitive dynamic was valued very highly. The reviewer actually contrasted Rally Speedway with other racing games, noting that while some titles might obsess over details like pit stop locations,
Right, the simulation aspect.
yeah, he said Rally Speedway provided great racing, but nothing else, which was meant as a compliment. The core, aggressive, competitive gameplay was prioritized over any kind of realistic complexity.
We've established this demand for high polish and this massive appetite for digital mayhem. So now let's shift into the third major trend that defined this moment, really high concept narrative experimentation.
Yes, developers were using these 8-bit computers not just for action, but for some pretty serious literary and political exploration.
And this brings us to one of the most ambitious games of the entire era, Macbeth for the Commodore 64.
Supplied by Creative Sparks. This was a big one. It put on 2 cassettes and cost £14.95. And the premise is just monumental. They adapted Shakespeare's powerful tragedy, The Scottish Play, into an interactive adventure.
And it wasn't just one adventure, was it? It was a 4-part saga. It was designed to explore the entire dramatic arc of the play.
It's incredible. Let's break down the sheer breadth of these 4 parts. Part 1 is Macbeth's quest.
So this sounds like the most traditional part.
In a way, yeah. The gameplay here leans toward classic action and discovery. You have to slay Scotland's greatest adversaries, but the main challenge is discovering and then decoding an 11th century runic script.
Wow. Okay, so that sounds like a serious puzzle phase. It must have demanded real deduction from the player to translate ancient text with an 8-bit interface.
It demanded a very different kind of patience than a platformer. You were a detective and a warrior at the same time. But then, the game just completely shifts for Part 2.
Part 2 is Lady Macbeth's crime.
And here, the whole genre changes. The focus moves from combat to stealth and time strategy. You are now playing as Lady Macbeth, and you have to murder the king and escape undetected, all within a strict 1-hour time limit.
The pressure must have been immense. It's not just about the act itself, it's about navigating the castle, avoiding guards, managing the aftermath.
It's effectively an early form of a stealth and resource management simulation, but then it gets even weirder.
Part 3, you become the witch's assistant.
Yes, and the gameplay shifts again. The review says it becomes mostly visual, though you still enter text commands. Your goal is to collect 10 specific esoteric ingredients for the witch's brew.
It sounds like a supernatural scavenger hunt. It completely breaks the historical and political realism of the first 2 parts.
Totally. And then finally the climax brings us back to Macbeth, besieged in Dunsinane Castle. You have to make one last attempt to seize the throne while withstanding a full military siege.
It's everything. It's political intrigue, supernatural quests, combat, stealth.
The structure is a masterclass in modular game design. It lets you experience the tragedy from all these different angles. But what truly set the game apart, technically, was how the graphics supported this narrative.
Right. Let's talk about the dynamic graphics innovation. It was a mix of text and pictures. But the key feature was that the graphics would change immediately based on what you did.
And this was a genuine technical miracle, especially for a cassette-based game. Think about the constraints of the C64 and just how slow cassette tape is. Normally, if you opened a door, the game would have to spend ages reloading the entire screen.
But the reviewer gives this specific example. If you open a closed trapdoor, the screen is redrawn with the trapdoor open. He also says objects you take or drop appear or disappear from the picture.
That persistence of state, the game remembering and redrawing the world based on your actions, was technically immense. The reviewer points out that this was something you usually only saw in disk adventures, which had much faster data access.
So to do this on a cassette meant some seriously optimized code.
It bridged that gap between the purely textual adventure and the fully graphical one. It made the world feel responsive and real.
But the dimension that truly defines this game's high concept, almost philosophical nature is the psychoanalysis session.
Yes, after you finish each of the 4 parts, the player, as either Macbeth or Lady Macbeth, is interrogated by the royal psychiatrist.
I still can't get over that. A royal psychiatrist in 11th century Scotland? It's so wonderfully absurd. What was the point of it?
Well, the session was supposed to reveal the character's moods and feelings. It was an imaginative way to force you, the player, to reflect on the moral and psychological consequences of your actions in the game.
Tying it back to the themes of the original play, like guilt and ambition.
Exactly. The game wasn't just asking if you won. It was asking if you understood why you did what you did.
And the whole package reinforced this. It came with the full text of Shakespeare's play and an instruction booklet detailing the historical context of, quote, the despicable deeds of those days.
It was interactive literary criticism being sold as entertainment. It just shows you the incredible intellectual breadth of development in 1985. They were not afraid to blend high culture with early digital interactivity.
Okay, so moving from Shakespearean psychology to cutthroat political sociology, we have The Prince.
For the 48K Spectrum, a cassette game priced a bit more modestly at £7.95. And this is another high-concept adventure, but this time it's centered on pure, morally bankrupt social climbing.
The Prince is a competitive 4-player game, and the objective is to become the master of lore, who is the second most powerful person in the land.
So it's a game of leverage, manipulation, and influence, and the source material just lays out the skills you'll need for success.
It sounds like a manual for becoming a political villain. The talents required include lying, bribing, begging, stealing, dealing, and blackmailing.
It's social engineering, pure and simple, and the game is built around 4 distinct characters, and each one has a special power that becomes your main bargaining chip.
Okay, let's detail these 4 characters because they seem designed to force interaction.
Right. First, you have Grasper, the landowner. He offers protection and influence over property. Then there's Ambrose, the cleric. His power is to dispense grace.
And that's essential because the prince won't even see you unless you've been absolved of all your wrongdoings.
Precisely. So even if you've bribed and blackmailed your way to the top, you still need Ambrose's blessing to seal the deal. It creates immediate leverage.
Who else?
You've got Porcus, the merchant, who lends money, which you'll definitely need. And finally, Fernando, the tipstaff, who has maybe the most direct power. He can send people to trial.
So Fernando could just eliminate a competitor entirely.
Potentially. Success hinges completely on how you leverage your power against your rivals, forcing these deals and betrayals. And you can also hire computer-controlled characters to help you.
Like spies and henchmen.
A whole motley collection of spies and henchmen, yes. It's this highly complex system of influence and corruption.
But it's the physical gameplay setup, what the outline calls the hot seat strategy, that really amplifies the tension in this 4-player game on a single keyboard.
It's strictly turn-based. Each player gets a turn at the keyboard, and you get 10 inputs. 10 moves to control your character, explore, instruct your spies. Then you pass the keyboard.
But the reviewer gives this crucial warning that turns the digital game into a real-world social pressure cooker.
The warning is simple. Don't spend too long at the keyboard. Because while you're there, deciding your 10 moves, plotting your strategy, your 3 opponents are standing right there.
Plotting against you for your entire turn.
That's brilliant, isn't it? The real difficulty of the game isn't just the code or the castle layout. It's managing the suspicion, the impatient sighs, and the whispered threats from the 3 people sitting right next to you.
It transforms the game into a true pioneer of social engineering gameplay.
It forces instant, reactive decision-making under high personal pressure. You have to be paranoid about your rivals, and you have to keep your strategy secret even though they're watching you type every command. It's a remarkable use of minimal hardware.
So from the psychological pressure of Macbeth and the political plotting of the prince, let's go back to pure technical challenge and deep system management.
Okay, this brings us to Warrior for the Commodore 64, another cassette game from beyond, priced at £9.95.
And this is a sequel to a game called Cytron. It drops you into this complex, abstract, 3D wireframe world.
A very abstract world. You are a Warrior, and your quest is to destroy the Source, which is the strongest of the creatures, and it's located an astonishing 80 levels deep in an ancient silo.
80 levels. That suggests an extreme commitment to depth and longevity. And the enemies are these abstract concepts based on human psychology, which is a really neat twist for 85.
Yeah, they're creatures literally bred from human mental energy. The creature types are divided up. You have the psi from pure mental energy. You have the ids, which are spawned from man's animal instinct, a little nod to Freud there,
And the pupae.
and the pupae, which are described as disembodied human entities. So the combat isn't about physical blows. It's all about abstract energy management.
You're constantly balancing two critical energy types, psi and id.
Correct. The creatures drain both from you. Your id energy is your primary fuel. It powers your movement. But your psi energy is what controls that fuel. If either one hits zero, you're in trouble.
And the psi energy isn't just for fuel control, you can use it for strategic advantages.
Right, things like teleportation, levitation, even temporary invisibility, which creates this constant strategic dilemma. Do you burn your psi energy to get past a tough group of ids, or do you save it to make sure you have enough fuel control for the next few levels?
Survival depends entirely on mastering that balancing act. How do you actually fight them?
You're armed with a psi net gun. You fire nets to trap them. Once a creature is tracked, you have to move in close to either drain its energy, basically absorbing its resources, or destroy it outright. The risk is that it might break free while you're doing it.
And you're moving through all this on a highly maneuverable, joystick-controlled hoverboard. The environment itself sounds like a technical maze.
It is a dizzying, complex 3D maze of passages. It's got teleport chambers, speed mats, slide ramps, open gaps. And the reviewer notes that some gaps require hard-earned and accurate skills to jump.
So there's a serious learning curve just to control the board, let alone survive 80 levels.
Absolutely. Which is why the developers included a critical quality of life feature. You could save your position, either to tape or to disk.
That's a subtle but really important acknowledgement that this wasn't a quick arcade game.
No, it was designed for marathon, dedicated sessions, a clear sign of that shift toward deeper, more system-based gameplay.
Okay, switching platforms and genres again, let's look at Cyclone for the 48K Spectrum, a very economically priced game at just £6.95.
And this is another high-tension, skill-based game, but this one is focused on realistic flight simulation under extreme duress.
The mission in Cyclone is acutely tense. You're piloting a helicopter through a raging cyclone that's approaching a group of islands, and you have to pick up vital supplies.
It's a game built entirely on managing environmental risk. And the interface is very demanding. You have your 3D view or a map, and right next to it is this highly detailed instrument panel.
That panel is your lifeline.
It is. It shows your altitude, speed, fuel, time, and most critically, the real-time wind strength. The whole tension of the game comes from controlling the helicopter while that wind is battering you. As you get closer to the eye of the cyclone, the wind strength increases exponentially.
And you risk just losing control and crashing.
It was explicitly praised for delivering the right combination of tension and skill. The reviewer said it succeeded where its predecessor, a game called TTL, had failed. TTL had great 3D graphics, but it lacked the killer instinct.
And Cyclone delivered that instinct by constantly threatening catastrophe.
Exactly, forcing you to make these minute adjustments based on what your instrument panel was screaming at you.
This whole spread of games, from the polish of Impossible Mission to these high-concept UK adventures, it gives us a fantastic technical snapshot of 1985. But we can't really understand the landscape without talking about the economics.
This is such a crucial piece of context. It helps you understand market accessibility and the perceived value of these games back then. We've seen games on cassette, disc, and cartridge, and the price variations are just enormous.
Right. The budget market was all cassettes. Cyclone on the Spectrum, £6.95. Spy vs. Spy on C64 cassette, £9.95. These were the mass market options.
Then you have disc-based games, which usually offered higher capacity and better quality control. So a game like Impossible Mission was a bit more expensive at £11.95.
But then you hit what you called the cartridge tax.
The cartridge tax.
Yeah.
You look at the Atari format, specifically Rally Speedway, that game cost a staggering £28.95.
That is nearly 3 times the price of a high-quality disc game. It's over 4 times the price of a budget cassette. We need to explain why that massive difference existed.
It's all rooted in the reality of manufacturing. Cassettes use magnetic tape. It's cheap, easy to duplicate, but it's slow and unreliable. Discs were faster, higher capacity, so you get a moderate price bump.
But cartridges used mask ROM chips.
Precisely. They were so much more expensive to make because they required these dedicated, custom-made chips mask ROMs that held the game code. They gave you instant load times, they were super durable, but the upfront hardware cost was massive.
And that cost was just passed directly to the consumer.
It was, and in 1985, £28.95 was a huge sum of money for a single game.
To put that in perspective, in today's money, that's easily over £100. It was a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people.
And that economic reality, it reinforces why the UK market relied so heavily on the cheaper cassette format for volume and for experimentation. If you're a bedroom coder, it's so much easier to produce and distribute a £6.95 cassette game than a £28.95 cartridge.
It explains why we see this fascinating mix. You have the super high quality, high budget foreign imports like Impossible Mission, and then you have this wild conceptual experimentation coming from budget-conscious UK developers who are pushing narrative boundaries instead of chip limits.
And the reviewers, clearly, were impressed by both. They were impressed by the sheer polish that money could buy and by the incredible ingenuity that necessity inspired.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into January 1985, these magazine excerpts, they really reveal a moment of profound definition for the whole industry.
I think so. First, you just see the undeniable raising of the quality bar, that emergence of the cinematic, polished platform.
Impossible Mission.
Exemplified by Impossible Mission. It just showed what 8-bit hardware could really do, and it forced the domestic industry to step up its game, especially with animation and sound design.
Second, we highlighted that rise of aggressive competitive multiplayer. Both Spy vs. Spy and Rally Speedway, in totally different genres, proved that a huge part of the fun was linked to the joy of betrayal.
And rules-bending sabotage, yeah. Turning the physical presence of your opponent, the person sitting next to you, into a central feature of the digital experience.
And finally, there is just this incredible narrative ambition. Developers were willing to experiment wildly. They were combining text adventures with dynamic graphics, which was a technical feat on cassette.
And layering on these unique, high-concept elements, like the royal psychiatrist in Macbeth or the social engineering of the prince, storytelling and philosophical ideas were driving forces right alongside technical power.
What these sources reveal is a really fascinating tension in early 1985 game design. On one hand, you've got this relentless drive for technical realism.
Getting those metal footsteps just right, achieving accurate helicopter controls against the wind, making character animations perfectly smooth.
But at the same time, there was this commitment to complete glorious absurdity, psychoanalyzing Lady Macbeth.
Or giving players explicit permission to drive their rally cars happily through the bushes, houses, and pools just because it was only in a computer.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. When you look back at these foundational pieces of interactive entertainment, was the 1985 game industry driven more by pushing the sheer technical limits of the hardware towards a perfect simulation of reality?
Or was it driven more by realizing these increasingly wild, high-concept ideas that the very existence of the computer made possible, regardless of whether it was accurately simulating reality or not?
Were they focused on realistic simulation or just bending reality to create the most outrageous and unique kind of fun they could imagine?
Keep that question in mind as you explore the boundaries of interactive entertainment today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep your curiosity sharp, and may your pixels stay perfectly aligned.